All right. Hi, Ghassan. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Vonvo.com to discuss the, civil war that's been going on in Syria. It is January 20th. Just so you know, right now I am recording the conversation, and I just want to get permission from you that we will be uploading this recorded discussion after it is completed onto YouTube. Is that okay with you?
Well, thank you first, for giving me this second opportunity to speak here. And yes, recording and posting is not a problem for me at all.
Great. You're welcome. Next thing that I just wanted to mention is that here at Vonvo, we want our discussions to stay both civil and organized. We don't want there to be any personal attacks on anyone. So, are you willing to, abide by those rules?
I would not have it any other way.
Great. Okay. So then, let's get started. Ghassan, would you mind just giving um, anyone who's watching right now and people who watch this video in the future a quick background of yourself?
I'm not a politician. I am from Lebanon, and in fact, if anything, I'm far professionally from the world of politics. I'm a science graduate. But I do have an interest in the political events of the region because they shape my life, they shaped my past, and they are going to shape my future and the future of my children and grandchildren. And one cannot just sit back and watch and pretend that everything will be fine because, when the going gets tough, tough gets going, and people have to take some action and be responsible. This is basically the background that drives me to be involved in this, if I am at all involved.
Great. So what I wanted to ask, and you kind of just brought it up. What exactly is it that relates to this idea of it has shaped my past? It's presently affecting me, and by all means, it will reflect the upcoming future. Could you give us a little bit of detail on how this matter impacts you?
Well, you're asking me to give away my age. Thank you very much.
No,
That's fine.
no.
Look, I am in my 50s, and for as long as I can remember, there's been war. There's been flux of refugees, coming from Palestine, and then the civil war in Lebanon started. So you just cannot isolate and insulate yourself from the tumultuous events that are going on around you. Even if you try, you just cannot. So it's been an ongoing battle, literally speaking. And even though we do have some form of peace and quiet now in Lebanon, but we cannot just turn our blind eye to what's happening in Syria because what happens in Syria is happening, in fact, in Lebanon. I wouldn't say it's affecting what's happening in Lebanon because I do not really see much difference between the two countries. They're just like two states within one federation, more or less. And and even if some people want to say that what's happening in Syria is not affecting Lebanon now at all, it's very highly likely that it will affect Lebanon directly in the future. So yes, past, present, and future have been all affected. My past, present, and future with those political events of the region. Yes.
Okay, so I mean, what I guess I would ask next is, something that I've been wondering lately is when it comes to the Assad regime, their past. You said you've been seeing war going on over the past 40 years. I think you just said. What is it? What has been the root cause you believe of the constant battles and wars going on either inside of Syria or between Syria and Lebanon? And do you think it has to do with the Assad regime?
Uh, well, the answer to this is yes and no. But if you look at, I'm really glad you asked this question, Max. It's very pertinent because it's the events of the last 40 years that have put Bashar Assad, now the son of Hafiz, in this situation, because if you look at the timeline, what's happened in the last 40 years or so, the Assad legacy, if I can put it this way, has created many enemies for itself. Like back in the early 80s, and I think precisely in 1982, there was a vicious conflict between the forces of the government and the Muslim Brotherhood. And this made out of the Assad regime a very strong enemy of any Islamic movement, not just in Syria, but also in Lebanon. And then again, within the same year or so, just after the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982, Israel basically had all of its Lebanon under its wing, and it even coerced the Lebanese president at that time, Amin Gemayel, to sign a peace treaty with Israel, which was never ratified. And no one would ever imagine at that time that Israel was going to be kicked out of Lebanon, but it eventually did, because the Lebanese resistance rose from the ashes in the early 80s, and by the year 2000, Israel was forced out of Lebanon, hereby, by the help of Syria. The Lebanese resistance was able to do that. Without the help of Syria, that would not have happened. So that Israeli-American plan in Lebanon was totally foiled by the what you call the Assad regime. So here you go. On one hand, the Assad have made enemies with the Muslim Brotherhood. Then they made big enemies with Israel and the USA because they foiled the bloc in Lebanon. And of course, let's not forget, as Lebanese, again, I'm talking about Lebanese, being Lebanese, the Lebanese forces, or Al-Quwat al-Lubnaniya, as we call them in Lebanon, they fought severely with the Syrians, so they have a vendetta with the Syrians, specifically with the Assad regime, as you call it. And then you have Hariri, who accuses Syria of killing his father. And of course, you have Turkey, which has always had its eye on Syria and in fact still occupies a big part of Syria. So, the Assad legacy has stood up against all of those forces, internally and externally, and thereby it made for itself a lot of enemies. And even though those enemies are very, very diverse in their background, in their ideology, we have found now that there is something very, very strong that unites them. And what unites them is their hatred for Assad. But it doesn't mean that they love each other anymore. I mean, can you imagine? You have a coalition that has, on one hand, the ultra-Christian Lebanese military wing, the Lebanese forces, and the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, this is ironic. This is hysterical, to say the least. But they are now united because they have a common enemy that they hate. But rest assured that should they gain the upper hand, and I hope that they won't, they will start fighting each other. And now even in Syria itself.
Ghassan, is
sorry,
this
I know I'm taking
Ghassan?
is this the because you asked me.
Ghassan? Who is this that would begin fighting one another? Who are you saying would be doing that?
Because you have a very funnily structured cocktail of enemies of Syria that are now united by their hatred to Assad. If they get the upper hand, God forbid, they will turn against each other. Because we have in Syria now people or fighters who are with an Islamist agenda, others with a pro-American agenda. Just let's simplify it as that. Just imagine that you have people in Syria that are exactly like the Taliban in Afghanistan. And while America is fighting and killing the Taliban, it is sponsoring and supporting their brothers and cousins in Syria. So if those people get the upper hand, there is absolutely no doubt at all that the USA, through its agents, cohorts, whatever they are, people on the ground in Syria, are going to start fighting each other. If not on ideological terms, it will be on who is going to be getting the power, who is going to replace Assad. And this is the question, I mean, we're going now, we're digging a little bit from your answer, from your question. But when we talk about a revolution in Syria, we're not talking about something to organize. We're not talking about B coming over to replace A. You have B, C, D, and F all the way to Z that are competing with each other to replace A.
Right. So
Yep.
what
I will stop here because I can go on and on, but I will stop here.
Right. So what I would ask, something that interests me that I wanted to ask is what exactly is, you have the Middle East, which is, primarily composed of, Muslim states and countries. Um, what I wanted to ask is where does the root cause and the hostile environment between the Turkeys and the Lebanese and the Turkish and the Lebanese and the Syrians. Where does that uh, hostile relationship stem from? How far back do because we have a lot of Israel-Palestine debates that come on to discuss this, and usually they go back to 1948. I mean, are we talking pre or post that time? Where the because you say continuously that Turkey has an eye on Syria. What is the reason for all these eyes looking at one another in this region, especially those three countries? I guess we'll address, and if you want to throw Jordan in there or Egypt, I guess that's fine as well.
Well, that's again a very complex question, Max. Let's start with Turkey. Turkey was a big colonial power in the Middle East, and it was basically thrown out of the Middle East about 100 years ago, after the its loss of World War One. And basically the breakup of the Ottoman Empire. And after that, for about 90 years at least, Turkey minded its own business. But obviously, Erdogan has got some colonial aspirations, and he wants to be the new sultan, in some form or another. Again, I can expand on this, but I will stop here.
Right, go ahead.
In as far as other forms of hatred in the region, perhaps the most ancient one that is coming to life now is this rivalry or hatred, if you like, between Sunnis and Shias, which, in fact, if anything, it's being fed by the regimes in Saudi Arabia and Qatar who are scared to death of any rise to prominence on the side of Iran. Now, whether or not Iran has any expansive aspirations in the region really remains to be seen. I'm not saying that they don't. Don't get me wrong. I really don't know. The truth is that I don't know. What I do know, however, is that Iran has been supporting Hezbollah in its fight against Israel. It's been supporting Syria. And if I look at the region and look at the real major conflict, I see nothing compared to the Arab-Israeli conflict. And as a Lebanese, as an Arab, I have to see it as the first one and the most important one. And anyone that supports me against Israel is someone that I should be happy to join forces with. And maybe I should qualify that statement. What I mean by saying anyone who supports me against
Could you clarify
Israel.
that? Could you clarify that?
I'm not saying I want. Sorry.
Can you clarify that, please?
Yeah. Look, the Middle East is in a state of war. Okay. Now, of course, there are some extremists in the area that would want to totally eradicate Israel, and I don't support that. And there are other extremists on the other side that will say, well, we can't defeat them, let's sign a peace treaty with them on their terms, on Israeli terms. And I do not accept that. And basically, what has been happening in the region in the last 40, 50 years or so is that we have seen the rise of two camps in the Arab world. One that is going to be prepared to totally kowtow to the American-Israeli plot, and have peace with Israel on Israeli terms, and you have the other camp which refuses that, which does not mind at all having peace with Israel, but not on their terms. Because we have rights, the Palestinian people have rights, and any peace should be a peace that respects all of these rights. And this camp in the Arab world has been basically presented and galvanized by Syria. And only Syria stands still firm on that. This is the eyes of Israel and the United States are on Syria, because for as long as there is a strong government in Syria and a strong army, they are not going to have the peace plan in the Middle East that will give this long-term security for Israel.
Okay.
All of this, all of what you see now, Max, in the region is about the long-term security of Israel. Forget about reform in Syria. Forget about democracy. I mean, does anyone really think and believe that Qatar and Saudi Arabia care about democracy? For heaven's sake, they are the biggest dictatorships in the world. These are countries that don't even allow women to drive. Do you really expect that those people are sponsoring the revolution in Syria because they care about liberalization?
Right. Maroon, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you speak a little louder?
It's okay like this?
Yeah, I hear you, Ghassan. Do you hear Maroon?
It's very faint. I hear him, but I can hardly understand what he's saying.
Okay, if you want, you could raise his volume a little bit on his face, on his camera. You can raise his volume. And Maroon, I was just gonna say, right now your screen is black on my end. Do you want your audio or do you want your video to come in?
Well, only the audio. It's fine.
Okay, so go ahead. What did you want to respond?
I can turn off the camera.
What did you want to? Did you have anything that you wanted to respond to Ghassan about?
Well, many things I'd like to answer to Ghassan, but I'd like to introduce myself to Ghassan that I'm against the Syrian government, and as look, I'm sorry, Maroin, I can hardly hear you.
Yeah.
It's very, very faint.
Maroon, can you please speak louder? Just because you're coming in, but faintly. So can you just try to, like, I don't know, yell, but at least speak up for sure.
All right. Hassan, I want to tell you that I'm against the government, but I know that people are supporting the opposition. They are not as much as good as Bashar himself. Do you hear me? It's okay?
Yeah, you're better now.
Well, yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you better now. All right. For our allies, they also have many defaults, and like you said, in Qatar and in Saudi, the women can't drive, and this is something which I don't even share. I mean, I live in France, so this is not the thing which I want to be in Syria. And regarding to the Taliban, like you said, in Afghanistan, that these people are the same in Syria. I don't think that you can compare the Taliban in Afghanistan and the people who are fighting in Syria, because most of the people who are fighting in Syria are Syrians, and these things which can't be, which you don't have basic information on this, because of the country which is closed by the government. So you can't have this information about how many Syrians are at the moment fighting with the opposition. So I can assure you, and
because of my family and because of all the people know since the beginning of March 2011, I can tell you that most of the people are Syrian.
Ghassan, do you want to respond?
Look, thanks, Maroin. Look, the question here is you don't know really who you are going to believe because we see footage of people speaking with non-Syrian accents. When I say people, I'm talking about fighters here. There is always there is always incursions out of Lebanon into Syria of fighters and arms and everything. Incursions out of Syria. Now, the exact breakup of fighters in Syria. What's the percentage of non-Syrians? No one knows. The fact remains that even if 1% of fighters in Syria are non-Syrians, and I'm sure it's much more than that, I can assure you that according to the information and to the ideas that I get from friends, that more than half, much more than half of the fighters in Syria are non-Syrian. But even if 1% of them is non-Syrian, why would a country like Syria, that allegedly has a huge uprising against its president, need to import any fighters from overseas when all of its youth are trained? They all go to conscription. They all are, battle ready. Why would they need to import any fighters from the outside? And I often, like nearly every day, I see on the internet pages photos of Saudi fighters who have been killed, Jordanians, Chechenians, Libyans. This is a daily event. This is a daily event, Maroin. You really honestly cannot deny that. I cannot tell you again what percentage of the fighters are non-Syrians and what percentage are Syrian. But this is really honestly beside the point. It's totally beside the point. It's like splitting hairs here. The fact remains that there are foreign fighters and that their agenda, look at Jabhat al-Nusra. Look at Jabhat al-Nusra. All they want to do is to establish an Islamic state in Syria. Now, what does this do to the non-Sunnis in Syria? What does it do to them? What promise of liberation and democracy are they offering? None, absolutely none. Their only agenda is to establish an Islamic state in Syria. And when I compare them to the Taliban, all you have to do is look at some photos of those fighters, compare them to the photos of the Taliban. If you have two photos without any caption, you will not be able to tell the difference because they even look exactly the same. They have the same slogans, they carry the same flag, the same beads, the same way of dress, same ideology, same everything. So, do I have the right to compare them to the Taliban? I honestly see very, very little difference.
All right. Um, I I don't say that there are no foreign use fighters in Syria, but let's just say that, like you said, if there is 1%, these 1% they don't understand the aim of the Syrian people of the Syrian revolution. They don't understand because why? Because they are wash-brained. They come from areas like you said, from Lebanon, Turkey, from Iraq, from Afghanistan. I don't say that they are not coming. If someone have the same enemy with you, would you would you prefer to kill him or would you prefer to kill your same enemy? And this argument of that even 1% is present in Syria, this argument who is using the regime to continue the repression and to let the foreign countries like Moscow, like China, realize to say that, oh, we have to take care. We can't say that there is an opposition. There are so many terrorists that you have the Syrian government have to continue himself, to keep on himself, and to continue the repression. And this is why, at the beginning, because at the beginning the people didn't have any weapons. All the Syrians were only making demonstration in the streets, and after maybe 2 months, when people begin um, to left their clothes and to go on the street and to show them we really don't have any weapons. I don't have any invisible weapon. And you see on you that the tank or the police or the militia of the government is killing them. It's real kill. I mean, it's you stop the life of people. And when you have this, after losing so many people, you can't say, "Oh, we're gonna keep on demonstrations and we are not gonna fight." But when this is a question of death of life, you have to fight and you have to take weapons. And regarding to the Islamic State, I don't think that this is solution too. But when you have a country where the majority of the citizens are Muslims, this is logical to have an Islamic country. But which Islamic country do we want? We don't want an Islamic country which applies the same rules and the same laws in Arabia Saudi and in Qatar. We want a country to keep the same advantage that always Syria had, which is what? Which is the secular regime is gonna keep after the religion, the rebellion. All the Syrians don't have any problems with Christians and with Alawites and with all the other religions who even do not believe in the same thing. If they don't have any blood on their hands, we don't have any problems with them, and we can work together, and we can work together. And many people who left the army and left the government since the beginning of the uprising, they were always calling all the Alawites and all the people who are helping the regime to tell the truth. And you have maybe every week some people, some like 2 weeks ago when we had two Alawite journalists who were working in a radio in Damascus, and they left Damascus to come to Paris, to come to France, to say the truth, to say that we were blocked, our families were blocked. We had the order to change the word rebel by terrorist and opposition by conspiracy. And all of these things show that the regime is a liar. They are liar. And they are continuing
Right.
wash bringing that they have really good performance in.
Ghassan, can you respond to that?
Yes, I certainly can. Maroin, I want to thank you for saying that yes, the target is to establish an Islamic State, albeit a moderate one. And I want to thank you also for saying that you want it to be a secular state like the one that's currently in existence. So you are admitting and acknowledging that the current state is secular. So what's the point of changing it? That's number one. Secondly, if you look at the states, i.e. the countries that are supporting the people, as you say, against what you have referred to as the repression of the government, I will read that list for you. It's Saudi Arabia, Qatar, USA, France, Israel, UK, and Turkey. Probably there's others. Now, in all honesty, do you think that any of those governments gives a hoot about the repression of the Syrian people by their government? I mean, Israel cares about the repression of Syrian civilians? The USA? France? For Christ's sake, what are we talking about here? And since when is a country like Saudi Arabia and Qatar, as I said before, who represent perhaps the utmost form of authoritarianism and dictatorship, have the ability to say and the audacity to go to another country and say, you have an oppressive regime, you should go and change it. The truth of the matter, Maroin, here, let's be frank about it. They only hate Assad because number one, he stands against Israel. Number two, because he's Alawi. Because they are scared of the expansion, what they see as the Shia expansion. They don't want to see Iran becoming bigger and stronger. They do not give a damn about the Syrian people and what happens to the Syrian people. They only want this man to fall down because for as long as he's standing up, they are not able to, number one, have the peace they want to have with Israel, and number two, they are not able to control Iran and keep it at bay.
Right.
There is nothing else about it. None of those countries offered arms, men, and money because they want to help the Syrian people get out of their repression. Get this out of your mind. This does not exist.
Right.
That's a fallacy.
Ghassan, so can I ask you something? You brought up, the idea of Sunni Shiite and am I pronouncing it right? Alawi in Iran. Is that am I pronouncing that right?
No, the Alawis or Alawis, you can say, are in Syria and Turkey, really, not in Iran.
Okay, so I mean, is that ultimately then, if you're saying that they don't want to see the Alawis, get have more power, and that's what they're scared of. Does this then become really a crusade where it's like a war of religion? Is that really what it's is it not, is that really where you think it strictly plays here? It's really about religion and different sects of religion?
In the eyes of the rebels, it is. Because when you look at the slogans, Max, when you look at their agendas, they're just talking about establishing a Sunni state. And they were chanting a slogan earlier on in the war, Al-Alawi للتابوت والمسيحي لبيروت, which translates to Alawis goes to the tomb or to the box, to the tomb, and the Christian goes to Beirut. They put it in a way that rhymes. So how can a revolution have a secular agenda if its fighters are chanting these kind of slogans? Come on, Maroin, give me a break. There is nothing secular about the uprising in Syria. It's a sectarian war against a government that is totally secular, which just happens to have a president that's Alawi. And that's what it's all about. Let's get rid of this Alawi dog. That's how they that's how they see him. When you squeeze them. I have had this discussion many, many times with many people. And I ask them, so why do you hate Assad? Did he do this and this and this? They say no. Did he prevent you from sending your kids to university? No. Did he stop you from getting a job? No. And then at the end, when you really, really squeeze them, they will say, he's just the Alawi dog. That's what it's all about. This is what it is all about. Sectarian hatred, nothing more, nothing less. In the name of democracy, in the name of liberalization.
Marona, please respond. I mean, I think this is really interesting discussion.
Yes. Yeah. Well, to begin, for only the end of the thing you said, and after I'm gonna answer to all the other things. I was used to go to Syria every summer, and since I was born in France, and I always wanted to make some jokes about the president and about the intelligence service in Syria called the Mossad. And always the people were so scary, so afraid by me saying only a word about these. They were like, "Oh, what are you saying? They're gonna kidnap us. They're gonna come to us." And in fact, I never realized before, but when I grew up and I began to thinking that, oh, since 40 years, there is this personality cult about Bashar. I mean, when I'm thinking only about going to Syria, I was putting in my head the head of Bashar. Why do I have, when I go to France, I don't put the head of the president. I put the head of the tradition, the cultures. Bashar doesn't represent Syria. And this is why I don't think that he must keep, first of all, to the government. Secondly, you talked about Turkey and the USA and Qatar and Arabia Saudi. All these countries, why do you think that they are helping us? Because of interest. Because all of these countries want interest. Which interest? They want the interest for the future, for all the energy that you can find on the Syrian ground, and for the position for the USA to come next and to come more next to Moscow. And at the second hand, like you said, Iran, they are not giving weapons, but I don't know how can you think about this when you have so many proofs by videos and by journalists and by people who don't even care about the regime or the opposition. I mean, really independent people. And these people, they are going to tell you that, and you're going to see that, oh, plane coming from Tehran. What what were he what were he keeping in the plane? Weapons? What? And when you have the problem of the plane passing from Turkey, coming from North Korea, you can say, oh, Syria has an ally like North Korea. How can it even be possible? North Korea, the most closed country in the world. And when you heard about these people who, like you said, that all the Christians must go out and all the Alawites in the box, these people don't represent Syria. You don't have to take a case for a generality. They don't represent Syria. And me and all the people, I don't gonna say you all the people, because I know a few people who are not perfect. We have the same enemy, which is the government, but these people think about killing Alawites, and I don't even think like them. Because why? Because they are thinking that the revolution is for only Islamic beliefs, and I don't think that it's all the Syrian views of all the people. I mean that it's like I said yesterday, that Syria became a prison, and when you are in prison, you have to turn to religion, and because there is no Bibles, they turn to Quran. And before the revolution of the Syrians were not as much as they are now religious. I mean, I knew so many people who didn't pray before the revolution, and now that they see all these murders, all these problems, they begin to pray, because it's a refuge of the religion. And
Right.
this is why, this is also the argument of the regime. And this is the regime himself that he created the, like you said, the ethnic war by doing what? What were they doing? Putting only officers, and not only, but by in the majority of the case, putting officers who belong to it, and making this intelligence service, mukhabarat, held by his Mahir. And you can see that people since a year and a half are opening their eyes. And as far as yesterday, when we saw this plane with this pilot who defected the army and shelled the mukhabarat, it was a big how can you say it? It was a big attack on the
Right.
regime.
Right.
And more are the people opening their eyes, more the victory is coming. More,
Well, Ghassan, I know you probably have a response
Yeah.
for that. What I was just going to say, though, is we have an individual inside the text chat named Raphael who asks to you, Ghassan, what do you see as the end game in Syria? Do you believe Assad leaves quietly?
So do you want me to answer this question first, or to respond to Maroin first,
Why
or
don't,
do
why,
it together, perhaps?
why don't you respond first, and then you'll go ahead and answer the question.
Okay. Well, I will give Maroin some time to think about it, because I will ask him a question, and then I will go back and answer Maroin's question. Maroin, you're talking about this a growing awareness among the fighters. Well, I don't see it that way at all, because I'm seeing it. I'm seeing them becoming more and more radicalized. So let me ask you the question: if what you are saying is accurate and represents the truth on the ground, who is the leader of this secular, liberating, enlightening revolution in Syria? What's his name? Where does he speak? Where are his writings? Where are his speeches? And how does he inspire people? I would like to know who is that elusive person in, because all I see are spiritual leaders like Araur, Sheikh Araur, who is asking people to go out and burn and kill and pillage. I see similar characters to Araur, but I haven't seen anyone who is, like secular, all-inclusive, and inspirational. So I would like you to tell me. I would give you a few minutes now while I answer the question of Raphael to think about it, to tell me who is this fantastic inspirational leader that is coming to replace Bashar. And now to you, Raphael. Raphael, I really don't think that there is a way out of this, sadly, other than a military defeat, one way or the other, because the rebels do not have a political agenda that is on any form of a strategy with which you can negotiate. There are no halfway marks between total fundamentalism and a state, albeit imperfect. I never said, mind you, I'm never saying that the regime in Syria is perfect, that some people were not imprisoned unjustly, that some things didn't happen unjustly in the last 40 years. Sadly, these kind of things happen, but I would like to see them as as mistakes. Mistakes do happen, and any country in the world needs reform. There's no such a place in the whole world that is totally perfect and does not need any reform. But if you compare the situation in Syria 40 years ago to the way it was just before the war started, you could clearly see that the country had made a huge progress towards reform, including economic reform, without any doubt. So here you go. You have a government, it's not perfect, but it is nonetheless secular. It was on the path of reform. And against it, you have groups, not just one group, many groups of fundamentalist fighters with one thing on their mind, and that is to establish an Islamic state, kill Christians, or deport them out to Lebanon and kill all the Alawis. That's what their agenda, despite of what other lies they try to perpetrate. So how can you negotiate with these people? What would be a halfway mark? I see more possibilities to negotiate with anybody else except those people. There's absolutely no halfway mark. I mean, I'm not making any comparisons here, but when the Palestinians and the Israelis, they sit together on a negotiating table, they're looking at a map and the borderline. Where do we draw the line, here or there? There is something that you can discuss. I mean, of course, the Israelis have been very stubborn. They don't want to give away anything, but that's beside the point. There is at least and you can say that we can draw the line here or there, or 50% that way, or 20% that way. But with the fundamentalists, there are no halfway marks. There are no two-third way marks. You either have to defeat them or be defeated. And I believe that at the end of the day, the Syrian army will be the victor.
Okay, Maroon, did you want to respond to Ghassan's question?
Yeah.
You can address Raphael's question. And the one thing I just wanted to inform each of you of is that, in another 10, 15 minutes, I'm going to have to be going, because I have something Vonvo related to do as well, just not, conducting a discussion. So I just wanted to thank you right now at this time for your, continued participation on Vonvo. I actually, found this discussion, not like yesterday's or last week's wasn't great, but with some of these more specific questions answered, I thought this was really, really solid.
All right. First of all, I have to answer to Ghassan. And so, like you said, the leader, we don't have any leader. The leader is our heart. It's our thinking. Because if we had a leader, maybe that we will want since a while. But problem is we don't have this leader. Because why don't we have this leader? Because I'm sure that you know some Syrians, and that the Syrians are very smart people, and people who, when they know something, they are really, really sure about this. So you can't take all the Syrians and represent them by a leader, because you have people who are not their place in Syria. And if you put a leader, these people are gonna say, no, we don't want to keep, because this guy doesn't represent ourselves. And now the opposition council, who is working with the USA and France and Qatar and all these countries, they are trying to stop killing. And this is the only point which I am concerned about.
Right.
Because killing someone is not human. And obviously in 2013.
Right. We have
just something for, like you said, Christians.
Yeah, I was just gonna say we have.
Yeah, and for the Christian, I don't know if you heard about this.
Go finish your point, Maroin. I'm sorry, and then we'll introduce Doug.
Sorry.
Finish your point, Maroin.
All right. Well, just I don't know if you know the story in for the Christian in Aleppo, where you have a house retreat of Christian people who live there since the 13th and the 14th. They are living in this house of retreat, and every morning the chief colonel of the Free Syrian Army come to give them bread, because there are no longer way to give food for the people there because of all the road closed. So this colonel come every day in the morning to talk with all Christian retreatees and to give them bread. And I don't know, but I think that this represents so much, because this guy must certainly be very, very busy in his time, and he is dedicating his time to be friendly with these people who didn't do anything. And I'm sure if Bashar throw a shell on this house, what would he say? He would say that this house has been shelled by fundamentalistic groups because they are against Christian.
Right. So let's get Doug. How are you? Do you hear us, Doug?
Yeah, I hear you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Maroin and Ghassan, do you hear Doug okay?
I can hear him.
All right, great.
Okay, good.
Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. What I wanted to say was, when this whole thing first started, we believed that Bashar Assad would be gotten rid of because he was a tyrant, like Gaddafi and like Mubarak and like Saddam Hussein. He was a tyrant, bullying his people. And we thought originally that, wow, maybe a democracy will come in to Syria. The people will rise up. Here's a revolution. They want democracy. And so we said, okay, we're going to send them food and blankets, and we'll have another democracy besides Israel in the Middle East, and it'll be Syria. But then we finally, it took us a while, but I don't know why, but after seeing what happened in Egypt and in Libya and in Iraq, that the Muslim Brotherhood comes in, and they're actually worse than what was there. Maybe Iraq would be in better shape if Saddam was alive, and Gaddafi was doing a great job. And Maroin even said that before 40 years ago, till before this happened, that Bashar Assad was doing a good job. But the problem is, we thought a democracy was coming in, but obviously the Muslim Brotherhood is coming in, and the great people of Syria, which Maroin was talking about, who like to eat bread and everything, they've got to be ruled by a tyrant, whether it's Assad, who is and was a tyrant, or it's the Muslim Brotherhood. There cannot be a democracy in Syria, in Libya, in Egypt. And we'd love to have, the Americans love to spread democracy all over the world, to all peoples, and have every country be a nice democracy, but it's not happening, and it's not ever going to happen. Some people have to be ruled by a tyrant, and the Syrian people are going to be ruled by a tyrant, and it's not going to be Assad, because eventually, when the rebels get strong enough, they're going to march in, and Assad has said he won't leave. He'll die in Syria. He won't leave. And guess what? Saddam Hussein did the same thing. He hid out in a village where he was born, and they found him and killed him instead of running away and saving his life. And Gaddafi was found in a car in outside Tripoli, and he was murdered. And the smart thing would be for him to leave, because eventually the rebels are going to surround the palace wherever he's holed up, and they're going to kill him. They're going to drag him out of there, and they're going to kill him. And that'll be the end of the rebellion. And as more and more generals and more the army capitulates, and the rebels get stronger and stronger, there will be nobody to stop them from marching in to Syria, into the capital, Damascus, and taking Assad out and shooting him. So that's the future of this confrontation: is the rebels win and Assad loses, and the Syrian people will always be losers, because they'll never have a democracy.
Ghassan, why don't you respond to that? Just because you hadn't been in there, you hadn't spoken yet.
Thank you, Mike, and I share with you many of your views, though I don't share many of your future vision. And let me assure you that Western-style democracy is not the epitome of governance. It has never been. It doesn't work anywhere. And for one would think that it works in the United States, because American people, in fact, using democracy, have voted in an idiot to the White House by the name of George W. Bush, not only once, but in fact twice. A man that wreaked havoc and created wars right, left, and center for no reason. And you are now paying the economic price of his big military gamble.
But we don't have a king. We don't have a king, and we don't have a tyrant. We have a Congress.
Look, I'm not making.
It's a democracy. When will Syria have a Congress? Tell me when they will have a Congress with elected officials. When is this going to happen?
You are talking in a pompous American way. You know, be civilized, be like us. For Christ's sake, in the United States, people kill each other in school. You are not the epitome of civilization. Get this out of your mind. We have been living in the Middle East for thousands of years, and we have a much longer history in survival than the United States ever have, and probably ever will have. So do not ever come to me, flexing your arms, telling me, you uncivilized people, you have to be like us, otherwise you are going to be living in slavery and ruled by dictators for the rest of your life. Because in fact, what you live in, my friend, in the United States is nothing but a fool's paradise. You have worse than dictators. You have government that's stealing your money, borrowing your money to wage wars right, left, and center. When will the American people wake up to that?
This is the Muslim view. This is the Muslim view. I understand. It's the typical Muslim view. We're all infidels, and we need to be killed. Kill the infidels.
Doug.
Did you hear one word of what I said against the Muslim Brotherhood, and you're accusing me of being of an Islamic agenda?
Kill the infidels. When will you have a Congress? When will you have a...
Doug. To
have a discussion with Doug. It's either him or me on this list.
Doug.
I cannot have discussions with people who are so bigoted, who put words in my mouth.
Okay.
It's either him or me, please.
Doug, I know this is your first time appearing on Vonvo, and we try to keep our discussions, first off civil and then organized. So we don't want people talking over one another. If we can just keep it very organized, that would be best. And obviously we don't want any personal attacks either on anyone either. So you're definitely welcome to your opinion, and we want to hear it. But we just don't want to accuse anyone else of anything of anything. Let's say they don't believe in. So Ghassan, finish your point, and then Maroin, you can come in and speak, and then Doug, you can go afterwards.
What is your point, Ghassan?
I have been. I don't know how long ago you came online here to hear what I was saying, but now you are accusing me of being pro-Muslim Brotherhood. If anything, it is the United States government who is pushing the agenda of Muslims in Syria. It's providing them with men, arms, and money because of the hypocrisy of the system that you have. And your total, I'm not talking about you personally, I'm talking about the government of the United States that has been playing God with the rest of the world, saying to some countries of the world, you have to have democracy like us so we can consider you to be civilized.
Okay, I agree 100%. I agree.
Do not interrupt.
I agree.
Do not
agree.
Do not interrupt me. Do not. Otherwise I will leave. For heaven's sake. You've had your chance. You've had your say.
What's your point?
My point is that, number one, Doug, you don't know what you're talking about, with all due respect. You have no idea what you're talking about. You confuse things with other things.
Ghassan.
And you don't know anything about the history. You know nothing about what's going on in Syria.
What is your point?
Basically, you have taken this whole discussion onto a tangent. You've taken it away from its main course and direction. And now you're
what's your point?
Yeah, Ghassan.
What is your point? What is your point?
My point is there'll never be democracy in Syria.
Yeah, okay. All right, there will never be a democracy in Syria.
Well, Ghassan, do you think that there's...
Who told you that Syria want to have a democracy? And in the Middle East, we mock your Western democracy. We mock it. We think it's stupid. Your people think it's the epitome of civilization. It's not. It's not. It's a mockery.
So what's the future of Syria? What's the future for Syria? What are you going to have? What do you want to happen? What do you want to happen there?
Maybe that's something we can talk about next time, because time is up now. I have to go, and Max has to go as well.
All right. So Ghassan, thank you for. I do have to go short. I really do have to go as well. Ghassan, thank you for your time. And I'll be in touch, very soon. Thank you for your help. Maroin and Doug, if you guys are interested in continuing your discussion and maybe some of the points that Ghassan made, that's more than fine.
Yes, some of the points.
All right. Have a good day, Ghassan. Maroin.
I wouldn't mind coming back again.
Well. Goodbye.
Thank you, Ghassan.
Goodbye. Shalom from Israel.
Maroin, go ahead, and I'm gonna end the recording now.
Shalom.